All right, so here's our invasive species spotlight of the week, and also giving props to Team Killer Algae. So this is the species that Team Killer Algae is named after, Caulerpa taxifolia. So you can see some pictures on the left side of the screen. This is a marine invasive species, tends to form really dense stands. Monotypic means it's just that same species, nothing but Caulerpa taxifolia through that area. It's pretty competitive, so it crowds out native marine vegetation, affects the behavior of fish, and can also be toxic to herbivores, whether those are herbivorous fish or invertebrates. And you can see on this slide all of the green and the map in the bottom. Those are areas where the species is native. So this is actually a pretty cosmopolitan species in the sense that, it's from all over, tropical to subtropical to even, temperate areas of the world in coastal environments. But there are a couple of notable areas. So the Mediterranean is one, and then off the coast of California, both of which are generally kind of cooler areas of the ocean where the species has been introduced and become invasive. And actually, it's kind of an interesting story in Southern California when they first found some populations of Caulerpa taxifolia. The way that they eradicated them was by putting giant tarps across the bottom of the ocean. So basically they shaded out the killer algae to kill it off. And I don't actually know whether that's been effective over the long term. It certainly was effective for the short term. So this is just one example of an impacts on a fish. So this was this little fish is a bottom feeder in the bottom right picture, Meinesz or Meinesz. I don't know a whole lot about fish. And basically what we're looking at is the behavior of this particular species of a bunch of individuals. And so scientists observed behavior of so youth fish, basically subadults, adults, and then total is the overall time that these different groups spent swimming, resting, or foraging. And so in areas where Caulerpa taxifolia, the invasive plant or algae, was established, those are areas in the gray, and then areas where it's not established are in the black. So you can see that this fish spends a lot more time overall swimming around in areas where Caulerpa taxifolia is established, and a lot less time actually foraging for food in areas where it's established. And so presumably that's because these dense infestations of Caulerpa taxifolia change the habitat structure and likely inhibit foraging. And less foraging, more swimming means less eating and is not generally good for the growth of either individual fish or overall fish populations. So that's an example of an impact. But what's pretty cool about this species is actually a genetic study, because there was this question of how the heck did the species even get into the Mediterranean? And these areas of the Mediterranean and coastal California seem like they should really be too cold for the species to survive. It's more in the tropics and subtropical regions. And there was this hypothesis that, maybe this species was actually one that was bred specifically to be cold tolerant. And there was, because we know that in 1980, there was a cold tolerant strain that was developed in Germany in Stuttgart. And this is specifically because this is a very popular aquarium species. So, and if you have a saltwater aquarium and you want species that are a little bit cooler tolerant, and you want some nice algae growing in there, then it's nice to have a colder tolerant strain to do that. So 1980, an aquarium in Germany developed this cold tolerant strain of Caulerpa taxifolia, shared it with all of these other aquaria that are sort of numbered on this figure in the top. And then they think that it was probably the aquarium in Monaco that initially released the algae into the Mediterranean. And that's not necessarily that they took a, took a whole aquarium and dumped it into the sea or something like that, tiny bits of this stuff can proliferate. So again, tiny propagules flushed down the drain when you're cleaning your aquaria, then end up in the sea and likely started the major infestation in the Mediterranean. And so this Jousson et al. 1998 article was trying to figure out, well, is this actually the case? Is it true that the invasive strain found in the Mediterranean is genetically the same as the one that was bred in Germany? And so they did a genetic study. So this is in the late 1990s. So, when we were still sort of in the early stages of genetic analyses. So what you're seeing on the right side is a phylogenetic tree. So the more branches further away you are in terms of branching means more phylogenetic distance between, or genetic differences between those different species. So you can see down at the bottom, there's different Caulerpa species, Caulerpa prolifera, Caulerpa mexicana, found in other areas. But the big gray bar at the top, those are all the Caulerpa taxifolia. We've got some not quite subspecies, but slightly more distantly genetically related species of Caulerpa taxifolia in Guadeloupe and Martinique, which are both in the Caribbean as well as in Japan. But that whole list on the top of the species in the Mediterranean that were collected in the Mediterranean and the species that were bred in those aquarium and shared with the different aquariums, those are all no branching, genetically identical. So basically what this study showed was it just kind of last nail in the coffin in terms of, yes, this invasion was definitely caused by us people breeding this cold tolerant strain of Caulerpa taxifolia and then probably accidentally releasing it into the ocean in the Mediterranean as well as in Southern California. And this aquarium strain has also been found off the coast of Australia. So it's possible that that some of what's considered or what has traditionally been thought of native range in Australia could actually be some of the invasive aquarium strain. And basically what this cold tolerance does is it broadens the opportunities geographically for that species to invade.